Hello and welcome to Last Call. This is Season 1, Episode 2. We should probably begin by introducing ourselves. My name is John and I'm the moderator this evening. I'm also a writer for Tavern Keepers.
Hi, this is Angela. I'm a contributor for Tavern Keepers.
Hi, this is Bill Summers, also a contributor for Tavern Keepers.
And now that you know who we are, let's get into our first subject. Let's talk about Planned Parenthood.
Yeah, Planned Parenthood of Florida specifically is just on a tear as of late, or at least they're being covered more aggressively, going back to their lobbyist on the floor of the Florida House subcommittee talking about the need for afterbirth abortion, which was stunning unto itself. Then Planned Parenthood came out a couple days later with their, I don't even know if that you would call it an apology. I don't necessarily know that you would call it a clarification, because they didn't retract what they said. What they came out and said was, well, of course, a doctor would provide medical care. And this situation was essentially unheard of. Pulling up the site or the page on tavernkeepers.com if you want to read.
That's www.tavernkeepers.com.
Good plug, John.
That's what I'm here for.
Their comments came out on April 1st. It said, last week, a panel of Florida state legislators demanded speculation about a vague set of extremely unlikely and highly unusual medical circumstances. Medical guidelines and ethics already compel physicians facing life-threatening circumstances to respond. And Planned Parenthood physicians provide high-quality medical care and adhere to the most rigorous professional standards, including providing emergency care. In the extremely unlikely event that the scenario presented by the panel of legislators should happen, of course Planned Parenthood would provide the appropriate care for both woman and infant. Well, here's the situation. They say that they're compelled by ethics and medical guidelines to, in life-threatening circumstances, to provide high-quality medical care. In the situation that they were talking about in the Florida House of Representatives, at the panel, they were talking about a situation of a botched abortion. So why on earth would a physician and a mother who was trying to abort her child then turn around and provide life-maintaining medical treatment when they were trying to kill the life in the first place? They did not come back and say that they are appalled by such a notion. They didn't repudiate any of the things that their lobbyists said. They just said that they're, by ethics, compelled to provide life-saving treatment.
And even in their, quote, clarification, whatever you want to call it, they didn't say they'd save the baby. They said that they would give appropriate medical care, right? Right.
And that was kind of the point I was trying to get at inartfully, that they didn't say they would save the baby. And the medical procedure that they were discussing at the time was an abortion. So would the fulfillment of the abortion not be the appropriate medical procedure?
There's so much to be said about Planned Parenthood. I don't even know where to start.
And
the fact that, aside from this particular story about Planned Parenthood, targeting whatever group, the bottom line is that Planned Parenthood is big business. They reap huge profits. And what they are essentially is a maintenance program to ghettoize human beings. One of the consequences of destroying the family is you get unwed mothers and unplanned pregnancies. And Planned Parenthood's job is to help maintain the ghettoization and the lack of family. They are a machine that reaps huge profits, and their foundation has deep roots in the murder and death and despair of minorities and black people throughout the world now.
Going specifically back to Margaret Sanger, who, in some of her more famous quotes, again, if you'd like to see the article, please visit tavernkeepers.com.
That's www.tavernkeepers.com.
On blacks, immigrants, and indigents, Margaret Sanger said, human weeds, reckless breeders, spawning human beings who should never have been born. She also said on sterilization and racial purification, she believed that for the purpose of racial purification, couples should be rewarded who choose to sterilize. She also said that on large families with multiple children, the most merciful thing that a large family does to one of its infants members is is to kill it. Just going on and on. The woman was not a humanitarian, as she is bizarrely celebrated for. She was a eugenicist. She believed in the supreme race. On the purpose of birth control, she said the purpose of promoting birth control was to create a race of thoroughbreds. That was in 1921. So then, just as now, a goal of Planned Parenthood has not changed. And now what they're doing is targeting area codes, free services and free quote-unquote stuff paid for by the tax dollar to girls in these zip codes. It's a sick business model that is essentially sexualizing young girls as young as 14 in order to create more clientele.
And these are the same people that when young teenage girls go to them for birth control, they tell them, oh, we're not going to tell your parents about it, we promise. Next, something a little creepy and a little cool. Let's talk about the gates of hell. If you haven't seen this story, it's been making the rounds that an archaeologist has discovered the mythical gates of hell in an ancient city in Turkey. I'm probably butchering the pronunciation, but Hierapolis. Did a bunch of research on it, and it basically in antiquity may have been where, in the myth, Hades pulled Persephone into hell, the whole myth about how he gets seasons, all of that. But turns out it's this cave, and it's on an active fault line, and a whole lot of carbon dioxide coming out of it.
So basically, it's this really cool hole in the ground that they built some walls and shrine around, because anybody that goes down into the hole dies. They go, oh, look, everybody that goes down into this hole dies. It must be the gates of hell.
Well, yeah, they thought the noxious gases were coming from the underworld.
Uh-huh.
Well, as we said earlier, John, I think it's the noxious gases were really just those ancient Escalades hanging out down there, and they just built they built the gates of hell over the Escalades.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, the archaeologists, got all the breathing equipment and stuff he needed and went down in it and found out that it was actually a parking garage down there full of SUVs.
Yep, all the Escalades. Yep.
And there they are.
Not only did they find the gates of hell, they found proof that SUVs are the spawn of hell.
And the cause for global warming and noxious gases throughout the world. They actually all originated right there at the gates of hell.
So is this like a volcanic fault? Is it hot down there? Is it steam? Did they power their hot baths off of this? Because I know this is in that Roman period of time when, they loved their bathhouses.
Well, in that city, they did have a fountain that actually had pipes that would run to the houses and provide water for the different houses, so that was kind of cool.
So using the gates of hell to stay...
And to provide water.
Cool. Well, so I guess there is some use for the devil. He brings us hot water.
And also, way back in the day, the priests of the goddess Sybil, it was rough joining this cult and becoming a priest for it. You had to get castrated. But anyway, the priest of Sybil would go into the cave and go around it and come out not dead, and that would show that they were blessed and supernatural.
So they were worthy, basically.
Well, they were really good at holding their breath.
which in their time was worthiness, I guess.
That's some dedication, man. Hey, let me cut off your junk, go down to this hole, and when you come back out, if you live through that, then great, you're
worthy.
You're worthy. Oh yeah, that's what I want for my future.
To show that there's always going to be tourists, and there's always going to be people to make money off of those tourists. One of the things that the priests in that area would do is they would sell birds and small animals to the tourists so they could release them near the cave and watch them die. They'd hit the carbon dioxide and evidently die pretty instantly.
So they were the ancestors of Jeffrey Dahmer.
Or the ancestors of PETA. Maybe they were all just shelter animals.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes,
PETA.
Euthanizing them. It was like euthanizing old school.
And evidently this was also the site in, I think, Eastern Orthodox Christian belief that the Apostle Philip was martyred, was crucified upside down and buried. So just a lot of bad things happened in this city.
So the moral of the story is, if you find a stinking hole, run away.
Now we have a gun rights story and what happened to one veteran who left a message on his answering machine that his doctor just didn't like.
You've got a broken back and you got some back problems. Hey, let me come take your guns away. You might be crazy.
Okay, so let's talk about that. Let's talk about the veteran. And I know we got mentioned on Twitchy saying that we're jumping the gun on the whole VA and disabilities being used to get guns out of the hands of veterans, but it looks like it's happening. And just let me say that all these programs and all these things, they start very innocently, and they'll start with people that you can make a good argument for that probably shouldn't have a firearm, that, you know, it does have some type of mental disability or challenge that makes that not a good idea. But then it's just the slippery slope. It's the who do they come for next. So let's talk about this guy.
Well, going back to the Twitchy thing that you mentioned, that wasn't based on this story, just for clarification. That was a story that I believe that you wrote, John, a while back.
Yes.
A couple months ago, maybe in February, I want to say, about the laws coming out of the VA saying that they can determine without without a trial who gets their guns taken away. And
well, there basically is a trial, but they're not only the people going for it, they're the ones that make the decision.
Right. So it's not necessarily a typical hearing in the sense that most Americans think of a hearing or a trial. It's something that is specifically VA and not a whole lot of representation for the vet side of it, as I understand it, correct?
Right, and there's not a disinterested party making the final decision.
Right.
I think it's pretty obvious that the ultimate goal here is to disarm the entire population, and they're going after the weakest and those least able to defend themselves against it. And our veterans are the victims of this. These people, like this gentleman here, his story is that the doctor did not like the message on his answering machine and thought that perhaps he had a mental disorder based upon the answering machine, and sent the police to do a wellness check. And the police came and confiscated his firearms based upon the word of one guy who didn't like his answering machine.
And this gentleman, David Schmecker, 50 years old, out of Connecticut, he...
Shocking.
Especially given the light of the newly passed laws in Connecticut. He politely refused to submit to a psychological evaluation that his physician at the VA had asked him if he wanted. He wasn't there for it. He was honorably discharged. He wasn't at the VA for any sort of psychological problems. He was in pain and was there for a pain medication appointment. When the doctor followed up, it was the message that he listened to on his machine. He thought it was a little odd, so he sent police to the gentleman's house for a wellness check. You can listen to this video on tavernkeepers.com.
That's www.tavernkeepers.com.
If you want to take it, there's an audio there of Mr. Schmecker. He says, I live in Connecticut. I'm 50 years old. I am an honorably discharged disabled Navy vet. I do not have a psychiatric past or criminal past. On February 5th, 2015, they asked if I wanted a psychiatric evaluation. Shortly thereafter, after he refused, the police came to his house. They confiscated my guns and pistol permit. I was released from the police custody, by the way. They took him into custody. They didn't just take his gun. He was released 2 days later after the evaluation on his own recognizance. Since then, he's made several attempts to use the court and attorneys to fight the revocation of his pistol permit. On top of that, he was charged for his stay at the hospital when the police took him into custody. And he has to obviously pay for his own attorney fees to try to get his weapon and his permit back. He believes that this is a campaign orchestrated to disarm law-abiding citizens.
I agree with him. I absolutely agree with him. These people, these are the same people that will come to your house in armored vehicles, break down your door, pin you to the floor, and press the barrel of their gun into your nose and look you in the eye and say, you're a gun nut. These people are out of control, and they need to be reined in. Well, unfortunately, I don't know that we can rein them in. And my advice to anybody living in Connecticut, New York, and New Jersey
Colorado,
if you're for this, stay there. Don't come to my state. And if you're not for this, like this gentleman, get the hell out of Connecticut. Leave. It is time to go.
This gentleman, if you wanted to reach out to him for any, again, his name is David. His email address is diamondznnrust@att.net. It's diamondznnrust@att.net. And the story again is on Tavern Keepers.
That's www.tavernkeepers.com.
And the story title is All Vets Are Under Suspicion, Using Wellness Checks to Confiscate Veterans' Guns.
And just going on that, I keep hearing more and more people that are in the armed forces, getting out of the armed forces, etc., where they're getting told, yeah, you want to get on disability. You want to get on some type of disability because you're going to get X, Y, and Z benefits. And then you keep hearing about how benefits are also getting cut. They're trying to get people on those disabilities because once they do, they control them.
You have to give something up in order to be on their dime.
Well, that's going to wrap it up for this week. Please join us next time on Last Call. Check us out on the web at www.tavernkeepers.com or on Twitter at tavernkeepers. Everybody have a great week.